There are movies that make us laugh, others that inspire us, and some that simply entertain for a fleeting moment. But then, there are films that stay with us forever, carved into the deepest corners of memory. Movies that break our hearts, not because they are cruel, but because they remind us of the fragility of being alive. They become mirrors, showing us love, loss, sacrifice, and the unbearable beauty of sorrow. Today, we're diving into the saddest movies in history. These are not just stories told on a screen. They are experiences, emotional journeys that teach us about hope through despair, strength through tears, and love through tragedy. Stay with me until the end, because sadness, when shared, can become a quiet kind of healing. Let's begin with one of the most unforgettable. Grave of the Fireflies. At first glance, it looks like a simple animated film. But within minutes, it reveals itself as something far more devastating, a meditation on innocence, love, and the cruelty of war. Directed by Isao Takahata, this masterpiece from Studio Ghibli follows two siblings, Seita and Setsuko, as they struggle to survive in Japan during the final days of World War II. The tragedy of this story is not told through battles or victories, but through hunger, silence, and the everyday struggles of two children who only want to stay together. It's in the quiet moments, the fragility of their bond, and the desperate attempts to hold on to joy in a world that keeps stripping it away. What makes Grave of the Fireflies unforgettable is not just its sorrow, but its honesty. It doesn't try to glorify suffering or disguise despair. Instead, it gently shows how war destroys the smallest, most precious things: the laughter of a child, the warmth of a meal, the comfort of family. This is not simply a war film. It is a universal reminder that behind every conflict are countless untold stories of loss. It whispers to us that the real weight of war is not measured in victories or defeats, but in the lives of the innocent who never had a choice. Watching it feels like holding something impossibly fragile, something that you know will eventually slip through your fingers. And yet, in its heartbreak, the film offers us a lesson: to remember, to feel, and to carry empathy forward so that those lost are never forgotten. Schindler's List. There are films that you watch once and never forget. Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List is not entertainment, it is testimony. A haunting reminder of one of history's darkest chapters, the Holocaust. At its heart, it tells the story of Oskar Schindler, a German businessman who begins as a man chasing wealth, but ends as a savior for more than 1,000 Jewish lives. The movie does not glorify him as a flawless hero. Instead, it shows his transformation, how a man, confronted with unbearable suffering, chooses to act. The black and white cinematography strips the world down to its essence, like memory itself. And then there's the girl in the red coat, a single drop of color in a world of shadows. She becomes a symbol of innocence lost, of all the lives swallowed by hatred. That small red coat lingers in your mind long after the credits roll, like a ghost reminding you that behind numbers and history books, there were faces, children, families. What makes Schindler's List so devastating is not just the tragedy it depicts, but the reflection it leaves us with. What would we have done? Would we have stayed silent, or would we have risked everything for compassion? There's a scene near the end where Schindler, despite saving so many, breaks down, saying, "I could have got more." It is one of the most human moments in cinema, because no matter how much good we do, we often feel the crushing weight of what more could have been. This film is more than history, it's a warning. A reminder that cruelty thrives when good people look away. And yet, in its sorrow, it shows us something vital, that even in the darkest times, one act of kindness can become a light powerful enough to pierce the abyss. Schindler's List is not easy to watch. But some movies aren't meant to be easy. They are meant to remind us of who we are, and who we must never become. The Green Mile. Some movies feel like parables, timeless stories where good and evil, justice and cruelty, humanity and faith, are placed face to face. The Green Mile, directed by Frank Darabont and based on Stephen King's novel, is one of those rare films. It takes us into a death row prison during the 1930s, where the line between punishment and morality becomes blurred. At the center of the story is John Coffey, a towering man with the heart of a child. He has been sentenced to death for a crime he didn't commit. But John carries something extraordinary, a gift, a healing power that seems almost divine. Through him, we see both the best and the worst of humanity, the cruelty of prejudice and the miracle of compassion. The sorrow of the Green Mile isn't just about injustice. It's about the mystery of why the innocent often suffer most. Watching John Coffey walk toward the electric chair, whispering that he is afraid of the dark, feels like witnessing the world fail someone it should have protected. That moment pierces deeper than most tragedies, because it forces us to confront how often truth and kindness are silenced by fear and ignorance. But beneath the sadness lies a profound truth. Pain and loss are part of the human journey, but so is grace. The guards who witnessed John's miracles are changed forever, not because they stop the injustice, but because they carry his memory with them. His life becomes a reminder that sometimes, the brightest souls shine for only a short time, yet leave a light that can never be extinguished. The Green Mile asks us to look inward. How do we treat the vulnerable? Do we protect, or do we condemn? In the end, it is not just John Coffey who is judged, it is all of us. And that is why this film lingers like a quiet prayer, long after the screen fades to black. Requiem for a Dream. There are films that devastate us not with war or injustice, but with the raw, intimate collapse of ordinary lives. Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream is one of the most relentless portraits of despair ever put to screen. It is not just sad, it is suffocating, because it shows us how dreams, when poisoned, can turn into nightmares. The film follows four characters: Sarah, Harry, Marion, and Tyrone. Each of them is chasing a dream. Sarah longs to appear on television, Harry and Marion dream of love and stability, Tyrone of success and redemption. But their paths are consumed by addiction, and slowly, those dreams rot from the inside out. The most haunting part is not their downfall itself, but how familiar it feels. Their hunger for escape, their need to belong, their desire to be seen, those are all human. And in their fragility, we see fragments of ourselves. There is a moment when Sarah, played by Ellen Burstyn, stares at her reflection, lost in the hallucinations of diet pills, believing she is close to her goal. Yet what we see is a woman slowly vanishing, consumed not by evil, but by loneliness and the fear of being forgotten. That is the kind of sorrow that stays with you. Not grand tragedy, but the quiet, personal erosion of hope. Requiem for a Dream is difficult to watch because it offers no comfort. Its ending is a descent, each character curling into a fetal position, broken, trapped within their own illusions. And yet, maybe that's the point. The movie is a warning, a mirror held up to remind us how easily dreams can consume us if we don't ground them in something real. The sadness of this film doesn't come with redemption, it comes with silence, with the echo of what could have been. It reminds us that hope, without care, can sometimes be as dangerous as despair itself.
Got a winner. Our next winner is that delightful personality. Straight from Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, please give a juicy welcome to Mrs. Sarah Goldfarb! I'm delighted to tell you that you have just won the grand...
Manchester by the Sea. Some sadness doesn't scream. It doesn't break down the door or explode in rage. It simply lingers, quiet, heavy, like a fog that never lifts. That's what Manchester by the Sea is, a portrait of grief so raw, so unpolished, that it feels less like a movie and more like life itself. The story follows Lee Chandler, played by Casey Affleck, a man haunted by an unspeakable tragedy. He is forced to return to his hometown after his brother's death, only to confront the unbearable weight of his past. The film doesn't rush to explain his pain. Instead, it lets us sit with him, in silence, in awkward conversations, in the emptiness of ordinary moments. One of the most heartbreaking revelations comes in a flashback, the night when Lee's small mistake led to the fire that claimed the lives of his children. That moment doesn't just crush him, it erases the man he once was. From that point on, he exists, but he no longer lives. What makes Manchester by the Sea so powerful is its honesty. It does not offer tidy closure or easy redemption. When asked if he can move back and take care of his nephew, Lee admits, "I can't beat it." And that's the truth about some grief. It doesn't fade, it doesn't resolve. We simply learn to carry it, like a scar that never heals. Yet within that bleakness, the film also offers a quiet kind of beauty, the small acts of love that keep us moving. The bond between Lee and his nephew Patrick is imperfect, messy, sometimes even funny. It reminds us that even when life shatters, there are still moments worth holding on to. The sadness of this movie is not cinematic, it's human. It tells us that grief doesn't always have a cure. But in witnessing it, we are reminded of our own resilience, and the way life, in its fragile imperfection, still asks us to keep walking. The Pianist. There are films that show survival not as triumph, but as endurance, raw, fragile, and often unbearable. Roman Polanski's The Pianist, based on the memoir of the Ladislaus Spilman, is one of those films. It follows a gifted pianist in Warsaw as he struggles to survive the Holocaust, not through rebellion or heroism, but through silence, luck, and sheer will to keep breathing. Adrian Brody's performance is haunting. His Spilman drifts through a city collapsing around him, witnessing the slow erasure of his family, his community, and the music that once gave his life meaning. There are no grand speeches here, no cinematic explosions of hope, just a man shrinking into shadows, clinging to scraps of food and the faint memory of a piano he can no longer play. One of the most devastating moments comes near the end, when a German officer discovers him, starving and broken, in a ruined house. Instead of killing him, the officer asks him to play. And Spilman, skeletal, trembling, sits at the piano and lets his fingers tell the story of survival. The music is not just melody, it is defiance, it is mourning, it is the last fragment of humanity refusing to die. What makes The Pianist so deeply sad is its honesty. Survival here does not feel like victory. It feels like loss measured in breaths, the guilt of being alive when so many others were not. Spilman doesn't emerge a hero, he emerges a witness, carrying the weight of silence that so many others cannot. This film is a reminder that sadness is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, lingering in the spaces between notes of a piano. And sometimes, it is in that silence that we find the deepest truths about what it means to be human. Life is beautiful. Few films dare to blend joy and sorrow the way Roberto Benigni's Life is Beautiful does. At first, it feels like a love story, a tale of Guido, a man full of charm and optimism, who wins the heart of Dora with humor, wit, and unshakable belief in happiness. But as the story unfolds, this same optimism is tested in the darkest place imaginable, a Nazi concentration camp. When Guido, Dora, and their young son Josue are deported, the film transforms. And here lies its heartbreaking brilliance. Guido convinces his son that the entire ordeal is part of a game. Every rule, every order, every humiliation is reimagined as part of a competition where the grand prize is a real tank. In doing so, he shields his child from the unbearable truth, turning horror into make-believe, so that innocence might survive just a little longer. The tragedy of life is beautiful is not only in its setting, but in the way Guido refuses to surrender his spirit. His humor, even in despair, is his act of resistance. The most devastating moment comes near the end, when Guido is taken away by soldiers. As he marches toward his death, he turns to his son one last time, smiling, exaggerating his walk, pretending it is still part of the game. That smile, that refusal to let his son see fear, is perhaps one of the most powerful acts of love ever captured on film. When the camp is finally liberated, Josue is safe. He runs into the arms of soldiers who lift him onto a real tank, exactly as his father promised. But the cost of that victory is one of the purest sacrifices in cinema, a father's choice to protect his child's soul, even at the price of his own life. Life is Beautiful teaches us that even in the midst of despair, love can be defiant. Sadness here does not destroy, it transforms, reminding us that beauty exists not in the absence of suffering, but in the courage to choose hope when everything else has been taken.
Questo è il sacrificio che mio padre ha fatto. Questo è stato il suo regalo per me.
Abbiamo vinto!
Sì, abbiamo vinto! Gesù.
1000 punti da schiantare e da ridere. Primi si ritorna a casa col carro armato. Abbiamo vinto!
These 7 films are not just stories told through moving images. They are windows into the human soul, reminders of how fragile, and yet how resilient, we truly are. They hurt to watch, but that hurt is not meaningless. It's the kind of pain that deepens us, that stretches our empathy, that reminds us of what matters most. Because sadness, when shared, becomes more than sorrow. It becomes connection. When we cry for characters who never existed, we are, in truth, crying for ourselves, for our own losses, our own regrets, our own quiet battles. That is the secret power of cinema. It allows us to grieve together, across time and space, reminding us that we are not alone in our suffering. Maybe that's why these films stay with us. They are not simply tragedies, they are lessons. Grave of the Fireflies teaches us about innocence lost. Schindler's List shows us the cost of silence. The Green Mile whispers about justice and grace. Requiem for a Dream warns us of illusions. Manchester by the Sea reveals grief that never heals. The Pianist embodies survival through silence. And Life is Beautiful reminds us that love can bloom even in the darkest soil. So the next time a film makes you cry, don't turn away from the sadness. Let it sit with you. Let it soften you. Because tears are not just signs of weakness, they are proof that we are alive, that we can still feel, still care, still hope. And in a world so often hardened by indifference, maybe that is the greatest victory of all. And yes, the last video about the Pursuit of Happyness was the spark that led me to create this one. If you haven't seen it yet, take a moment, it might touch your heart the same way. Now tell me in the comments, did any of these movies bring a tear to your eyes? And if I left one out, share it. Who knows, maybe there's a part 2 waiting to be told.